Well, hey, welcome to United Opposition with Scott. And well, I'm not sure if Marshall's going to be in. I might be by myself. Let's see what happens today. Here we go. Yes, this is United Opposition. Normally with Scott and Marshall, there's a little bit of scheduling conflicts that may or may not be able to be resolved today. So I'm not sure if Marshall's going to be able to join us, but I have stuff here prepared to go over what we're going to do. And it springs from a conversation that Marshall and I had earlier, and just wanted to let you guys know we're going to make this announcement right now because of some of these scheduling conflicts that are coming up. We are actually going to move the time of our show. Normally it happens 4:00 on Tuesdays Pacific time right here in Bakersfield, and we're going to need to adjust that up a little bit later to about 5:45 to 6 o'clock, somewhere right around there. We're going to be doing the show starting next week. So starting next week, we're not going to be here at 4:00. We're going to be here closer to 6. So tune in maybe right around 5:45 to see how early we start there and move up there. But again, it was some scheduling things that have come up, and we're able to adjust and do that. And there should be back-to-back shows that evening. So that'll be happening. But again, that's if you're joining us for United Opposition. Normally, like I said, it's Scott and Marshall. Myself being the conservative person on the right, and Marshall being more the liberal person on the left. And we usually have discussions and talks and go over things. And there was a kind of a heated discussion on Facebook that took place where Marshall was asking me a question, and it was a legitimate question. I feel it was a legitimate question, and I want to go over that question today, and it has to do with our title. What's your line? Where is your line? What is your line? What's that line going to be? And basically, it's he was asking, Trump supporters, when are you willing to stop being Trump supporters? So I'd like to begin this again. Marshall may show up at any time, and he can join in if he's available. But I'm just going to continue on this right here. For Trump supporters, for people on the right and Trump supporters, I feel that most people on the right, I think there are some who think Trump is their savior. And I think it's a little bit extreme. Like, hold on, he's a man of God and saving our country. And I don't know. I feel like that could be a little extreme position to take. But I think in general, most of us on the right, we feel that Trump represents basically represents a final way of our beliefs being able to be backed up by a political figure. We see that Trump is a representation of the kind of things we want to see happen in government, and things that he promised in the campaign were all things that kind of aligned with what the conservative right was hoping for. And then immediately upon taking office, it looked like he was being, very much accomplishing everything that he said he was going to accomplish. We're just now hitting the first 100 days, and it's been a whirlwind of activity. But also at the same time, there's a lot of things that have been controversial, things that the left has been decrying and really seeing in their eyes as evidence of Trump being trying to set up a fascist dictatorship. And for those of us on the right, that feels just kind of really far-fetched, honestly. It feels pretty far-fetched that he's trying to become an authoritative dictator. It just doesn't align with what we see as Trump and what he's doing. Again, we feel that he's a representative and pushing forward several of the things that our side really wants, that the conservative right really wants. Just a few things like that, like rule of law, especially as it goes with immigration and political corruption, protecting our females, protecting our girls when it comes to transgenderism and female sports and female locker rooms and restrooms and protecting our girls and our women, not letting other nations walk over us. That's something that conservative right really wants America to be seen as not the country that gets walked over by everybody. We're really liking the External Revenue Service idea of maybe being able to actually lower or cut completely taxes for middle and lower class, and then exporting that cost as tariffs to other countries, and positively affecting, that's the hope, is positively affecting our economy in that way. Less regulation so businesses aren't strangled out of existence. More U.S. oil so that we can be self-dependent on U.S. oil, bring the price of gas down. If the price of gas comes down, the price of everything comes down. And then even as it comes to like reasonable gun laws, like, it's kind of gotten unreasonable for the longest time, especially in places like California and New York, and bringing in some what we feel are reasonable reasonable gun laws that kind of reduce the restrictions on law-abiding citizens, and still maintaining still maintaining law and order for criminals, but stop handicapping law-abiding citizens. And we believe on the right, those of us on the right, on the conservative right, we believe that Trump is acting in good faith to accomplish this list of things for us. But I want to address something for those of us who are on the right, who are conservatives. We should always, everyone should, not just those on the right, but everybody should always maintain the idea that there exists the possibility that we could be wrong. We could be wrong. We believe that Trump administration is acting in good faith to accomplish these things for us for the betterment of the United States and its citizens. But there exists the possibility that we could be wrong. And half the country exists on the idea that we are absolutely wrong, and Trump is indeed just nothing but a person trying to set up power for himself and his cronies, and absolutely just try to take over the country as a dictator. And that is unquestionable, and we have seen that from people like Marshall from the left saying that, and even at times saying it is unquestionable, and they are absolutely not wrong. That is the actual, like, they're like, we are not wrong. That is what's actually happening. And I always want to maintain the humility of, what if we're wrong? What if I'm wrong? What if I got this wrong? And in this conversation that I had with Marshall today, he brought up, he says, what's that final red line? Where is there a line? And he asked me several times, what's your red line? What's your red line? Where is the line where you're like, suddenly you just will not follow Trump? What is the line where you're going to finally realize, in their eyes, they're saying, you're going to finally realize that he actually is this fascist dictator trying to set up power? When are you going to be aware of it? What's your line? And I felt like it was being asked as a gotcha question, or I need a quote. I want a quote from you. And I realized I've never really taken into account that question. I've never considered that question. I've considered the question, what if I'm wrong? But I've never considered, when will I know that? When will I know if that's, again, those of us on the right were like, it's a ridiculous premise that's what's going to happen, but it's not impossible. It's beyond what we think is probable, but it is not beyond what is possible. And I never considered what would be my line. And I think that's actually a very healthy thing for us as the conservative right to consider. We should consider and declare, at least for ourselves, what would that line be? Because, I'm sure there were people in Germany in the 1930s who really didn't see, and again, everything comes down to comparing everything to Hitler, sorry, but I'm sure there were people in the 1930s who really didn't think that was going to happen. And then they were surprised. And at what point did they realize? At what point was the realization gonna happen? When were their eyes opened? And as Marshall is so fond of always saying, history repeats itself, and they feel that's exactly what's happening. Those on the left feel that's exactly what's happening right now, and they're wanting to make sure that they stand up and say, this is too far. We're not going to let it go this far. And for me, on those of us on the right, it feels like it's virtue signaling. Like, we just got to stand up and make sure that we were heard. I feel that it's mostly delusional, the things that they think are happening. But again, what if we're wrong? What if we are on the right are wrong? Should we have a line? And should we declare that line so as a reminder of ourselves? And that's what I want to do today. I want to discuss this. I wanted to discuss it with Marshall if he was able to be here. I really wanted this to be a discussion, but I had to do a little bit of soul searching myself and look into it and really ask myself these questions and really say, okay, I want to have some answers. I want to be able to say, you know what, if this line is crossed, I'm not going to go that far. Now there's some obvious ones that, obviously it's like if he stands up like Emperor Palpatine in Star Wars and says, we're going to reorganize into a new empire, and I'm going to be the chancellor, and I'm going to be the emperor. Obviously those things are, it feels ridiculous to even think like that's something that would happen, that he would come and do. And that would obviously be one that I feel most of us on the right would be like, whoa, hold on. And, but I think there's the fear on the people on the side of the left that are like, well, by the time you realize it, it'll be too late. By the time you realize, us on the right realize that he's gone that far, it'll be too late. And so I think it's a good idea for us to check ourselves, to look into ourselves. I believe it's biblical to always look into your own heart and to question your own motives and to check yourself. I think that's a biblical standard to never assume that you are always right and everything you're doing is exactly what's supposed to be happening. So I wanted to question myself, and I wanted to start on a list of where would I stand on certain things, and what would be a line where I'd say, you know what, hold on, this is not right. And so just very simply, the very first one that I could think of, that I put a little list here, but the very first one that I can think of, and some of you may disagree because there could be some legal shenanigans that could maybe make this happen. There might be ways of getting around this. I feel it's pretty clear in the Constitution that it can't be gotten around, but at the same time, I thought the Second Amendment's pretty clear. It says, shall not be infringed, and yet, courts and judges and lawmakers have found ways to infringe upon it, and we've been living that. So even though I feel like this is pretty clear in the Constitution, there may be a way that somebody finds a legal way for this to happen. But even then, I don't agree, and I would call this a red flag, a red line for me. And that is, if Trump somehow makes it onto the 2028 ballot, I will not be supporting him. If he finds a way to get on the 2028 ballot to be president for a third term, I will not be supporting that. I don't think that is right constitutionally. I don't think that is in the heart of what the Constitution is trying to do. I know that there's the argument of, they're making the argument of, well, there's not two consecutive, the limited by two consecutive, or whatever they're going to do. And it's possible you could find some legal loophole or twist some things and maybe find a legal way to make that happen. But I will not be in support of that. And I want to make that declaration here. Second, as we go into immigration and deportations, I think that that currently there is due process that is happening. I believe they're going through due process. I believe that they're. I saw this. It wasn't literally the Trump administration, but it was the sheriff in Florida somewhere. I believe we're talking about. Hey, listen, the priority is criminals that we know are not supposed to be here. These are documented, undocumented people. These are confirmed illegal aliens who have committed heinous crimes. We want to deport them and get them out of the country. And the next are people who have gone through the process, and it's been determined through the process to be deported. And we want to go and execute those deportations and do those by the law. And we're not randomly trying to pull people over and see, show me your papers. That's not what's happening. If that is what starts to happen, that would be a red line for me. If it crosses from this is here, the person gets arrested for committing a crime. They commit some kind of crime, and in the process of processing them, booking them, it's determined that, oh, hey, they're here illegally, that they don't have legal status here, then that starts the deportation process, and I understand that. Or if they've already been on the books as going through that, and it's been determined they need to be deported, that seems like a due process way of doing that, and that's fine. But if it crosses the line to where it looks like, to where it's confirmed, I don't even want to say it looks like, because anybody can say it's happening right now, all these things are happening right now. It needs to be actual policy. If it becomes policy that ICE officials are able to simply just round up brown people and check their papers, I would not be okay with that. That process, if that was part of the actual process, if that was part of policy, I would not be okay with that. I would not be in support of that. Same thing here for arrests for political figures. Now, here's one of the things that Marshall and I have kind of crossed about, and that is whether or not political opposition can be arrested. Like, what stops if the current administration begins to arrest people from the previous administration? Is that retaliatory? Is that political persecution? And I'm like, well, if they actually committed crimes, why wouldn't you prosecute them? Why would this fact that they happen to be a political opponent, be a reason for them not to be prosecuted? That should not give them clemency in that situation. If they broke the law, they should be prosecuted. So I have no problem with political opposition being prosecuted for laws being broken, for laws that they are committing. I have no problem with political opposition being arrested for that. But if it becomes simply, if you're part of this party, you're no longer part of the government. If you're part of this party, you're considered a criminal. If it's literally not by the definition for me is what have they done, not who they are. If they have committed a crime, they should be prosecuted and removed. If it's simply, well, they believe these things, or they're part of this party, or it's who they are, therefore they should be arrested, that would be a red line for me. That if I see that actually being crossed, again, if that becomes actual policy. All of these things that I'm saying, it's really easy that, and I can practically hear people making comments. I can't see the comments right now. I'm not sure if there's any there, but I can practically hear the people on the left screaming, "It's already happening!" in your eyes, maybe, but it needs to be legitimate, and that's where I have a problem. Is that the more you move these lines, the more you make these red lines farther and farther over here, the easier it is for someone to say, "See, that's already happening." It's like, well, that's not actually what's happening. Right now, I believe that all of the deportations that have happened have been through due process and have been processed correctly, and everything is on the up and up. Same thing with Doge. I feel that those things are being documented and those things are being done legally within due process and the proper way. I don't believe any of these lines that I'm talking about have been crossed yet. And again, the definition of those lines being crossed would be the declared policy. This is what we're doing. From now on, if you look Mexican, we're going to pull you over and ask for your papers. If that becomes policy, I'm out. And I think that's reasonable. I think any of us as conservative on the right, I think we'd all be in agreement with that if that became policy that brown people need to be pulled over and checked for their papers, then no, that should not be acceptable. Do I think that's going to happen? Absolutely not. I think that's a ridiculous thought that's what's going to happen. But if it were, again, we could be wrong. Always operate from the position that maybe I'm wrong. So that would be one of the lines for like I said, arresting political opposition simply because they're political opposition. There has to be an action, an illegal action that they did, that they performed, that broke the law, that they should be arrested for. And then also as it comes to the news media, I'm glad that somebody is challenging the news media. I'm glad that alternative forms of media are being allowed into and welcomed into the White House to people to ask questions and not just be what has been the legacy media that really has been, I feel, corrupt. It has been corrupt and absolutely biased to the left. It is tried to, as we see, it is directly attempted to alter elections. It is no longer. I don't believe that the majority of the mainstream media is there simply to report. I believe there is an agenda to make policy happen. That they will take action against those of us on the right, conservative on the right, to make policy happen to go according to their wishes. They are not indifferent. They are not unbiased. And I am glad that their stranglehold on the information that comes out to the United States people is being checked. I'm glad that there's a door being opened to alternative forms of media that so we can have diversity of thought. That as it came to the news media, we have not had diversity of thought for decades, and I think that that's a good thing, and I think that's great. And I think that if standards are set up and the media wants to play with those standards and say, hey, we're not gonna abide, well, then I have no problem with them being kicked out of the White House. There is nothing in the Constitution that says that they have to be welcomed into the White House. There's nothing that says in the Constitution that they have to have access to the president for their interviews. None of that is a constitutional violation of saying, you know what, you don't have a seat in the White House anymore. You can still report whatever you want. We're just not going to give you this access. You can find your own access. We're not going to promote you. We're not going to give you a privileged seat because of your lies and because of your bias. Not simply because that they're on the other side, but because of corruption. I think actual corruption. Now, if that line crosses to where the government steps in using either the FCC or any other arm of the government to then begin stopping broadcasts, like this network can no longer broadcast, or sets up we're going to have people inside there making sure you're saying the right things. You're going to have people censoring what's going on and requiring by law, like making law and actual sending people into there to enforce these rules or laws or whatever it might be that they think gives them the authority to do that, to silence media, I think would be a red line crossed for me. If broadcasts are being affected, that if arrests of journalists, again, simply because they reported something that they didn't actually commit. Now, if they committed a crime, if they stole information, or if they broke in somewhere, or if in the process of doing their journalistic job they committed a crime, they should be arrested. But if they should not be arrested simply because they posted something or said something against the administration. If that kind of thing starts happening, if broadcasts start being shut down, if journalists start being arrested simply because they spoke out, that would be a red line for me. Now, I that's all that I could have here. Like I said, I was hoping that Marshall will be able to join me today and maybe have some discussion and see where these can move, or if he could convince me that there was some farther direction to go. Again, if we keep farther, if we keep drawing these red lines closer and closer and closer up, I feel that we're starting to get into the idea of pre-crime. Like, if you cross this line, then we're going to shut you down, because if you do that, then you could potentially do this. If you say this, you could potentially do that. I don't believe in punishing people for pre-crime. This is not Minority Report, and there is no Office of Pre-Crime. I believe you have to wait until someone commits a crime before you can actually prosecute them. I believe that we don't want to set up, here's a red line, we're no longer support if they say this. Well, that saying something and doing something is completely different. And I understand that those on the left, the argument would be like, Scott, your lines aren't far enough. That by the time he crosses these lines, it'll be too late to come back. Your lines should be closer so that we can stop them we can stop them earlier. And I get that argument, but again, I feel I don't like doing pre-crime. I don't like punishing for pre-crime. I like it. These are all of my red lines are all based on an official statement, a policy change, a thing that is officially happening. Not, well, they're saying that, but I know they really mean this, therefore that's a red line for me. You can't claim to know what they mean. You know, the whole little, I know they said that, but that was a little wink to everybody. That wasn't really no, really, he came up there and did a Hitler salute and then wink hide it. No, it was just, but I want everyone who knows I really meant it, but I can have plausible deniability. It's ridiculous that people are making these claims of like, we know what they mean, therefore this should be the red line. No, I don't care what I think they mean. I want to see if they violate this. If it's policy and they violate this, then that's when it happens, and that's when they lose my support. Until then, I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt, because I do believe that the Trump administration is acting to accomplish the list of things that I put up here, that they're acting in good faith to accomplish these things as quickly as possible, and to literally say what their campaign promise was: to make America great. I live in America. I like America being great. I like America being represented well and being successful. And I believe that's what they're trying to do. If they're wrong, then they're wrong, but I don't believe they're evil. I don't believe they're intending to do anything wrong. I don't believe they're intending to take power. I don't think any of those things are happening, but we should always allow ourselves to look and say, what if I'm wrong? And so I felt all of us as conservative on the right, I think it's important that we make our own list. If you think the list that I gave, this short list of red lines seems reasonable, I think it'd be a good idea to say that. I think it'd be a good idea when people to talk about what's going on, that you think and you consider, what is your red line? What is your, I know I was talking with someone, that they said, like, well, it's ridiculous that to think that would even happen. It's like, yeah, I get it. But what if? Does it hurt to have that line drawn in the sand? Even if we think we're never even getting anywhere near it, that's fine. Draw it anyway. I think the conservative right, we need to draw that line so that if it does happen, we are aware. We drew that line, we said it, and all of a sudden, well, that's happening. We can't write it off. We can't shrug it off. We can't be like, again, the dumb analogy that I think has been proven wrong over and over again, the whole frog in boiling water, that we don't recognize that we don't recognize what lines we've crossed because we didn't draw them. And that's what I fear could happen. If we don't draw some lines, we may cross them and not be aware of it. So I want to encourage all of you on the right. I want to encourage you conservatives who are on the right. Look inward. Consider that we could be wrong and make that line in the sand for yourself. Say, if I see this happen, I'll have to stand up and say, Trump no longer has my support. If I see these things actually happen, if I see these policies take place, these official policies, these things, not what we know he meant, not, well, this is already happening, just look effectively, not effectively, not what you think he meant, but with literally declared policies that this is what's happening. Those are my lines. I think that all of us as conservative on the right should have those lines. We will, and that's what I wanted to have there. I'm sorry that Marshall couldn't join us today. But we will be here next week between 5:45 and 6 o'clock, to continue these discussions going forward, because Marshall and I still both believe that these discussions need to happen, that we need to have rational, reasonable discussions so that we are always checking ourselves. It's important that we all check ourselves and never assume that we're simply just right all the time. And the other side is not the enemy. The person who opposes you politically is not your enemy. The person who disagrees with you is not your enemy. All right. As a Christian, as a pastor, I know that I'm called to love people, love individuals, love everyone as an individual, as Christ loves me. And so I cannot look at the other side and assume that they're evil. I cannot look at a person who opposes me and assume that they're doing it with malicious intent. I have to assume that they want what's best. We just simply disagree on what that is, and we won't know what that is, and we won't be able to get to a point of agreement if we're stop talking. We cannot stop talking to each other. And that's what this show is all about. That's what this podcast is all about. That's what United Opposition is about, is continuing these discussions so that our eyes can be open, so that, like myself today, I can look and say, you know what? I never considered that question. I really should have an answer for that. And I hope you guys have an answer for that too. We will see you next week between 5:45 and 6 o'clock on Tuesdays. God bless you guys. This has been United Opposition.